Welcome to the Patient First podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bryan Laskin, where we, of course, are looking to increase the influence of today's engaged dentists. I'm very, very excited. I know that oftentimes I'm excited about our podcast. Otherwise, why would I be doing it, right? But this is a very special podcast for me because we're focusing on one of my favorite topics and really highlighting or teasing something that we've been working hard at work, the entire team over here at Upgrade Dental. Packaging something special that's coming to you in 2022 that we're very excited about. And, really, I came back just recently from the ADA meeting and Dentsply Around the World for the first time in a while, going to some trade shows and where there's, some really heavy hitters in dentistry that I got to meet for the first time. And I've been fortunate to work with the best companies in dentistry and through that met a lot of people who have a lot of influence in dentistry, which I'm just amazed at the wonderful people that work in this industry, including many of you, I'm sure, listening today are the people that I'm talking about. And when one of my friends in the industry says, "Oh, you've got to meet Dr. Laskin because of X, Y, or Z," and I talk with them, they always say the same thing. They always ask me, "Do you ever sleep?" Right? Because I work on a lot of different things, and frankly, I just get a lot of stuff done at a high level. And so you think, like, do you ever sleep? And they're saying it as a compliment, but I want to highlight something that I think is very important. There's a great book, The Question Behind QBQ, The Question Behind the Question. It's kind of a simple read, but really, I think it's important to think about when somebody's asking you a question, particularly when multiple people ask you the same question. What is the question behind the question? For example, if a patient asks you, "Oh," a new patient walks in for the first time and you as a dentist come in and they ask you, "Oh, how long have you been here?" Right? They don't actually care how long you've been at the practice. What they're really asking you is, do you know what you're doing? Right? And so how you answer that question really flavors whether or not you've answered the question behind the question. So you say, "Yeah, I've been here for a year," right? The patient's going, "A year, 12 months. Does that make a dentist qualified to see me?" You may have been a dentist for 15 years, but you look young and you just recently moved to town. If you don't reference your experience to that question, to the patient that asks you that question, you're probably not answering the question behind the question, and you've just lost some trust. And trust basically is the currency that we're working with, right? And obviously we want to build trust in many different ways, but really getting to what people are asking you. When people ask me, "Do you ever sleep?" What they're really saying is, how do you get so much done? It sounds like you're massively productive and wildly effective at doing what you do. And frankly, they are correct. And I don't say that with hubris. I say that because I've worked hard at it over the last 20 years at really, how can I be most effective with the least amount of time? How can I be very productive, insanely productive, sanely, right? Is really kind of what I look for. And there's another question behind the question, because particularly when it comes to something like when they ask you, "Have you been here a long time?" And it's really about trust. When people ask you, "Do you ever sleep?" they're kind of wondering about your lifestyle. They're wondering, do you spend time with your family? You must cut a lot of stuff out, and you're sacrificing something, because I don't think I could get as much done as you're doing. And they're right. You have to sacrifice to be insanely productive. There's no doubt about it. It is about cutting stuff out, but not what you think. It is about cutting out thinking small. It's about cutting out inefficiencies. It's about cutting out the energy soul suckers in your life who just drag you down. It's about really cutting out the minor things to make way for the bigger things. And as you know, the master of innovation said, Steve Jobs, that people think focus means saying yes to the thing you've got to focus on. But that's not what it means at all. It means saying no to the 100 other good ideas that there are. You have to pick carefully. I'm actually as proud of the things we haven't done as the things I have done. Innovation is saying no to 1,000 things. Now, I am not as good as Steve Jobs, so I have a lot of things going on because it's really, really hard when you have great things, which I think we're working on over here at Upgrade Dental and at Tooth Apps and at Abundance and at Dental Standards Institute, which are the companies that I'm focused on right now. it's really hard to say no to great things. And so really what that means is you have to surround yourself with great people who can do great things, and also say no to 1,000 other things. The way I like to think of productivity is very much like anybody who knows me knows that I'm a big car guy, and also I love electric cars in particular, because if I love this image here for those of you who are listening on a podcast. There's an image of a Boss Mustang on the left, which is just looks badass. It's got a hood scoop and it's all blacked out, and it's got like scoops, and it's basically a 2-seater. I mean, I think there's a small back seat, but it's a small car which is like almost 90% engine. Then on the right we have a Model X, which looks like something you'd go you'd take to go get a groceries. And if you turn on this Mustang, you're going to hear the snarls and the smells and smoke of a highly productive engine, right? This engine is producing massive amounts of power, as are these batteries over here. I would guess you could definitely have equal horsepower between the two. However, the Mustang goes 0 to 60 in 7.1 seconds, and the Model X goes 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds. Why is that? It's because all those cool sounds and smells and the sight, sounds, and smells of that combustion engine are what's all takes energy, and it diverts the energy from the road, where almost 100% of this electric car engines goes directly to the road and propels that car forward. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about cutting out the waste from your life, right? And the thing that we're putting together at Upgrade Dental is really shows dentists how to be wildly, insanely, massively productive, and applying it not just to your general life, which there's some attributes that I think being a productive human being is going to allow you to be a more productive dentist, but also your practice, your team. And today we're going to highlight 3 procedures that you should stop saying no to immediately. These are the sounds and smells that make you feel like you're productive, like that Mustang's crackling engine and the exhaust smoke that you're like, oh, this is a powerful car. But guess what? You're going 0 to 60 in 7.1, which is good. But do you want to be good, like Steve Jobs says, or do you want to cut out the sounds and smells? And people like that. Some people just love being busy and not being productive. And people love, I love the sound of that cool engine, right? However, I like going fast better. So I like electric cars. And I like hitting big goals. I like doing big things, and I like being insanely productive more than I like the sounds and smells of distractions of just feeling busy. And that's a lot of what this is about, because at the end of your life, at the end of the day, at the end of your career, there is only one resource that we can't get back, and that is time. You can get more money, you can get bigger practice, you can do all sorts of things, but the one thing that, if you're out of time, you are out of luck. We all have the same 365 days a year, the same 24 hours in those days, and the same 7 days a week, right? And it boils down to what you put into that time is what you'll get out. You have complete control, for the most part, of what, there's many things you can control, and you can control a lot what you say no to in your practice, what you say no to in your life. And it really makes a difference when you say no to something. So what we're talking about basically is capacity. And when thinking about capacity, I like to think of like the checkout lanes at a grocery store, because the most productive stores have massive amounts of checkout lanes, but they're only using about a third of them most of the time, but they have this extra capacity for flow through, right? And so there's things you can do to increase your capacity. You can increase the number of operatories. You can increase the efficiency of your checking out. You can have automated checkout where people check themselves out. And all of those things are great things that we'll dive more into in the course that we're bringing into in 2022. But there's just at some point, you can't increase your efficiency. And there's some things that you have to cut out, right? And what's ironic is that the smaller grocery stores with the smaller checkout lanes are probably, they may have as many items as the bigger ones. What it really means is that there's, if you go to like a super Target and they have X amount of items, and let's say it's I have no idea how big they are, 100,000 square foot store, and they have 1,000 items. So they sell, one item per 1,000 square feet. My guess is that if you go in a smaller store, they're selling more stuff in a smaller area, and that doesn't necessarily increase their capacity. What I think makes more sense is to trim down what you're doing and really focusing on it. And if you go to a grocery store, they're going to be selling all sorts of stuff. Sometimes they sell tires, or they sell hardware things, or they do flu shots. They have banks, they have restaurants. So in a place that sells food, they have somebody else making food and selling it to their customers, which is a little ironic. But there's a couple reasons why I think that they do those things, but they don't do nutrition consulting. If you think about it, it kind of makes sense if you go to a grocery store that they would have nutrition consulting. And I'm sure they've thought of this before, right? If they're selling hammers at the grocery store, they've thought about selling consulting services to people about nutrition. So why don't they do that? And I think there's two big reasons. And that's what I really want to highlight to show you the kind of things that you should cut out, because they could add these to a grocery store, the nutrition consulting, but they don't. And one big reason, I think, obviously, the first thing that comes to everybody's mind is it probably wouldn't be profitable. And even if it was profitable, it wouldn't be as profitable as the other things that they could be selling, right? So the first things that you should immediately stop doing in your practice are procedures that are not profitable, which you are not considering as charity. Right? If you decide to do things not for less money, or if you decide you're making a conscious decision to do charity, which is obviously we all should do some of that, but you should be in control of your profit. You shouldn't just like leave it up to chance. And for some reason, this I know is controversial in dentistry, to the point where most dental practices don't even evaluate their profitability for procedures at all. So if you don't even know if a procedure is profitable, don't worry, you're not alone. And for the vast majority of my practice, I didn't either, because it's not the norm in the industry. First time I thought about this, it was obvious to me what I needed to cut out. It was simple extractions. And by simple, I mean any extraction. Obviously, I wasn't doing complex. I was even a small, pedo tooth. I cut them out unless I was doing it for charity, because I didn't know when that patient came in if it was going to take me 20 minutes or an hour to extract that tooth. So what did I do? I am not going to get into a situation where I run behind. As you know, if you listen to this podcast, running on time is incredibly important to me. So I don't know if that procedure is going to take me 20 minutes or an hour. I scheduled an hour, right? And I don't like when I schedule an hour for something that I don't even know what we were charging at the time when I cut this out, but let's say it was $200. Well, that's not profitable in my practice, right? And certainly not as profitable as the other procedures I could be doing in an hour, like let's say 2 crowns. So for me, it was extractions and removable prosthodontics, because I didn't even know how to schedule that stuff. So I would have to just bake in all this extra time, which made it unprofitable for me. And in my practice, what we did was we actually had other dentists that could do those procedures. So it doesn't mean you have to ship it out of your office. It just means that if you can't do it profitably, and one big factor with profit is time. So if you don't know how long it's going to take you, you should have somebody else doing it, or do it for charity. So again, it's important to note that in my office, just like in your office, if you decide not to do these profitable procedures for you, they very well are profitable for somebody else. So, but I think a lot of general dentists like myself really should take a look at, does doing removable pros make sense? Does doing extractions make sense? Does doing, for some people, molar endo, right? If you're scheduling 3 appointments for 4 hours a time, I mean, obviously that's not going to be a profitable procedure for you. And for me, I love doing molar endo, and it was highly profitable. The other reason why I think that for a grocery store, having nutrition consulting would not be profitable, or not as profitable as other procedures and things that they could be doing. The second reason is that it isn't their core business. If you think about it, selling hammers doesn't seem like the same thing as a grocery store. However, they're just selling stuff. It's retail stuff, whether it's coffee beans or coffee pots. It's all the same stuff, right? It's just stuff that they're buying, or that people are buying. And most practices, I think, are like the opposite of grocery stores. We are not in the selling stuff business. We are in the consulting services. We're serving patients. We're selling our consulting services and our procedures that we perform to make people better, right? So we are a services business, not selling goods as much. And so for us, actually, and the reason why I picked grocery stores and nutrition consulting, because if you think about it, nutrition consulting may actually make sense in a dental practice. We are the stewards of the oral cavity. What's the first thing when you buy something from a grocery store? It usually goes into your mouth, right? And it makes sense for you to be talking to the people who are taking care of your mouth about the items that you put in your mouth. And I know there's a lot of dentists who are much more educated on nutrition consulting and actually talk to their patients about it, but I think it's very it's right now it's the exception, not the rule. And I'm not even saying we should make it the rule, but I do think it makes a lot more sense to offer whole health, complete health, nutrition consulting, health consulting in your practice than having a big area of your practice devoted to selling toothbrushes, because we aren't in the toothbrush business, in my opinion, right? And I know a lot of practices, and this might be controversial, having a big section with all different oral medicaments and toothbrushes and stuff. I think it makes a lot of sense for us to have, because there are some things that you can't buy at Target, who is a master of selling stuff. You know, there's whitening materials, there's different toothbrushes and things that if it's better than what they sell at Target, absolutely, I think you should have it in your practice and recommend it and have people have it as a convenience for your patients. But I think it's a distraction from our core business. Just like having a bank. I don't know, maybe people need to get money from the bank to buy things at the grocery store. My guess is there's probably a reason for that. But I would say cutting out the energy and time that you devote to selling things in your practice, for me, makes a lot of sense, because we are in the procedure consulting business, not in the selling stuff business like grocery stores, right? So the second thing that I think you should stop doing, so number one is things that aren't profitable for you, that you're choosing to be profitable being, right? This isn't cutting out charity. This is cutting out procedures that aren't profitable enough for you. And the second thing is stop selling stuff to people. I think you can have it in your practice again, and you should probably for convenience or recommendation, but actively working to sell people on $100 toothbrush that they can buy from Target for $75 probably. So you can make $30 of profit. That's kind of going back to the first thing. It's just not profitable. And I think it is that sort of feel good smoke mirror, the sound of the engine, that it's like, oh, I've got all this stuff I can have for people. And I don't think people are actually looking to buy it from us. They're looking to buy it from Target. The third thing that I think you should stop doing are things you hate doing. And this sounds very simple, but I think a lot of dentists do procedures they hate. I hear it all the time. I mean, I actually took residencies in both removable prosthodontics and in extractions, because I thought the reason why I didn't like doing those procedures was because I wasn't good at them. And I thought, well, if I'm more efficient, which I told you, I wasn't very good at them, but I did get better. And then what I found out is that even though when those procedures became profitable, I still hated doing them. For whatever reason, those procedures just didn't call out to me. And that, you know what? I don't need to do those procedures. There's prosthodontists and there's oral surgeons. So lucky general dentists, we get to choose. One of the things I love about general dentistry is unless you're talking about sealants and fillings, which you better like doing, everything else, if you don't like doing it, there's probably, if you live in a major town, there's somebody else that specializes in doing that thing that you hate, right? So refer to them or bring out an associate that can do it. And I've done both, and I think it works great. And by the way, you are just more productive doing things that you like. A lot of people say, oh, you should really do what you love. I don't think you need to do what you love. I don't think you have to absolutely love being a dentist to be an insanely productive dentist. But I do think you have to not hate what you're doing. You have to be good at what you're doing. And it's really hard to be really good at something you hate. I never really got to the levels of proficiency with removable prosthodontics and extractions that I did with any other area of dentistry that I focused on, because I don't like doing it. And so for extractions and removable pros in my practice, all three kind of went together. I mean, it was our core business, so we actually kept it in the practice and somebody else did that. But because I wasn't profitable and I hated doing them, then it's an easy cut it out, right? And I know a lot of people are thinking, boy, my practice isn't that busy yet. I need to do those procedures that I hate doing. Even though it takes me an hour and a half to extract a tooth, what else am I going to be doing in that hour and a half? And you may be right, but the chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, unless you just opened your practice, if you opened your practice yesterday, last week with 0 patients, kudos to you. You have a lot of gumption that I think that takes a lot of tenacity to build a practice from the very beginning. And you will probably need to be doing those extractions and removable pros, even if you hate them and you're not that profitable, but you can still do it obviously at the highest level you can. But for most dental practices, once you get a year in and you have even say 500 patients, I think you have to trim the tree, right? You have to get rid of the dead branches. You have to get rid of the weak branches, even the good branches, so that doesn't sap the energy out of the trunk of your practice, so that you can make room for the strong branches to grow, right? I think it's incredibly important what you cut out. And this is just, again, a little preview into kind of the things that we're going to be talking about in our Insanely Productive Dentist who's actually being productive sanely, because I think there's too many dentists who are just busy, maybe even being productive, but then they go, where did all the money go at the end of the month, right? I know my team's getting paid. I know my bills are getting paid, hopefully, right? And I know that there's a bunch of money coming in and that there's a bunch of money going out, but then I feel like I'm just on a treadmill, like a hamster wheel, going around and not making any money. All that horsepower is not meeting the road, and that's what we're doing. And if you'd like to learn more about becoming insanely productive sanely, we're launching this course, something very special. We're going to have an inaugural limited seating event that will begin very early in 2022. And it's going to be a 12-week event that will show you how to become insanely productive by maximizing what you're already doing in your practice, for most of you on the patients that you already have, and how to attract more. Obviously, that's a huge piece of the lifeblood of a practice, is getting in new patients, and minimize or eliminate the garbage, right? And there's a lot of garbage going on. And by garbage, I don't mean useless things. I mean good things that you need to eliminate to get to be insanely productive. You learn how to wildly increase your production, reduce stress, and set your office to run on autopilot. Really what it means is to become massively productive without any additional effort. Once you learn how to be massively productive, it takes less effort to do big things than it does to go be small. It takes more effort to have a smaller practice that does less production than to have a larger practice doing more production. So if you'd like to reserve your spot and learn how to finally get off the hamster wheel that can be your office, the dental treadmill, I like to call it, register to get more information at dentaltreadmill.com. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you in early 2022 and, of course, next week on the podcast.